alcohol has more damage
Mm.
on relationships, like within families, than drugs.
I think one of the issues with alcohol is it's more socially acceptable. It's been around for forever. It's legal. I feel like the effects can be pretty catastrophic. That feels a little dramatic, but that's the reality, and that's what I'd actually say.
Hi, everyone. On this episode of Be Faithful today, I am talking to a friend of mine named Matt Jackman. Matt has been a therapist for, I'm not sure, a number of years, but I asked him if he would come on and talk to us about the word of wisdom, specifically more focused on substance abuse because he's worked in that field. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation and learning from Matt. And Matt, would you mind giving us a little brief introduction to yourself?
Yeah, so I've been a therapist for 14 years now, and I've worked in the mental health field for 17 total. Um, yeah, you mentioned I worked with substance abuse. I worked for it's Volunteers of America. They have a substance abuse arm, Cornerstone Counseling. So I worked with them for about 5 years.
All right. So, really quickly, I just want to clarify because I know there's been just a lot of talk online about the word of wisdom and things like that. So, I want to read the word of wisdom comes from Doctrine and Covenants, section 89, and I'm just going to read a couple of those verses. Section 89,
Mm.
verse 4, and I'll just read a few of them. Behold, verily, thus saith the Lord unto you, in consequence of evils and designs which do and will exist in the hearts of conspiring men in the last days, I have warned you and forewarned you by giving unto you this word of wisdom by revelation. That inasmuch as any man drinketh wine or strong drink among you, behold, it is not good, neither meat in the sight of your Father, only in assembling yourselves together to offer up your sacraments before him. And behold, this should be wine, yea, pure wine of the grape of the vine of your own make. And again, strong drinks are not for the belly, but for the washing of your bodies. And again, tobacco is not for the body, neither for the belly, and is not good for man, but is an herb for bruises and all sick cattle, to be used with judgment and skill. And again, hot drinks are not for the body or belly. There is another excerpt from the church website where they talk about the word of wisdom more recently, and it says, since its introduction, prophets have taught about the importance of following the word of wisdom. In addition, they have taught church members to avoid substances that impair judgment or are harmful or highly addictive, whether legal or illegal. For example, vaping, the misuse of prescription drugs, and the recreational use of marijuana violate church teachings. Prophets have taught that we should also follow healthy practices such as nutritious eating, regular exercise, proper hygiene, and getting sufficient rest. So, with that being clarified, let's get into talking to Matt more about the substance abuse section. You said something earlier when we were just chatting that there's a difference between substance use and substance abuse. Will you clarify that for me?
Yeah, so substance use is kind of more on like the recreational side. It's kind of more having like a drink with dinner, something like that. And so that has its impacts in and of itself. But then the abuse is more kind of what I would be dealing with. In my work, I was dealing with people kind of high, on the high end. It was court appointed clients that were court ordered to substance abuse treatment or chronically homeless individuals that would need to attend treatment as a way to maintain housing. So they had a kind of an agreement with the VOA as a way to get people clean, get them off the streets, and get them kind of back to a more functioning part of society. And so that would be the more kind of abuse side, where it's more the addiction, it's more court involvement, more kind of detrimental, long term, more high end negative consequences.
It's not like black and white. There's not like a stark line like, oh, it turns into abuse if you're drinking every weekend. It's more of like your lifestyle has become so unmanageable that it's considered abuse.
Yeah, it's on a spectrum, and it can for sure, and even within the treatment, like there's different levels of treatment to kind of address where people are at and what level of assistance they kind of need to manage their use and to kind of overcome it. And so, yeah, it's not black or white. It's not one or the other. It's somewhere on that line. And yeah, it's not all created equal by any means.
Okay. All right. So going back to my initial question, can you kind of share with us what you've seen, how, and when we say substance, like, do you want to break out alcohol on its own, or should we just include alcohol with drugs? Because once it comes to abuse, is it kind of becoming all anyways? Or
I've always included it just as all as one. People tend to differentiate. A lot of the times it's based off the fact that that's legal, and they try and like that can kind of in their mind put it in a different category or is justified, or even that they feel like it's not as damaging sometimes. But a lot of drugs can be just as damaging just because they're legal. Kind of the same rationale can happen with prescription drugs. Like, hey, it's prescribed to me, so it's fine. When in reality, like you can abuse those just as much, just as high. So I've honestly always, as a therapist, kind of combined it together and seen them as kind of one big thing, just substances in general.
how would you say that impacts somebody, like, on the level of their spirituality, self-esteem, physical, financial? Like, what does that look like for somebody who's abusing substances? And to put it back into the main reason, not following the word of wisdom.
Yeah. As a therapist working with substances, I actually, it's going to sound kind of weird. Like I really enjoyed doing substance abuse work because it always kind of gave me that one thing to go back to when really what you're working on is the underlying issues. Like, why are they using substances? Why are they abusing it? Why do they continue to use it? One of the criteria to have like an actual diagnosis for substance abuse is that it's continued use despite ongoing negative consequences. And so somebody's going to continue to use this even though it's negatively impacting them, and they're choosing to do it over and over again. And so what it looks like is going to be very different in individual for the just whoever it is. So when you're saying like, what does it look like? It's going to be loss of freedoms, loss of health, loss of connection, an inability to manage things from their own emotions to their own life. And so, and once again, that's going to be on a spectrum. Like this really is a really big topic that's going to span so much. And so, yeah, if you're asking what it's going to look like on an individual level, you're just kind of looking at like the damage that it's doing, why they're continuing to do it despite the damage, and kind of those underlying issues. Does that make sense?
I mean, it makes sense that there is, and I've always kind of believed that as well. So I've had substance abuse issues in my family, and a phrase that someone close to me would always say is like, it's just self-medication. And so like it's like obviously there is an underlying issue that they're trying to treat instead of getting professional help for it or whatnot. But let's get more specific. Like what do you see in general how abuse has affected somebody's spirituality, like a self-worth, spirituality for them, the way they feel about themselves?
So with somebody's self-worth, what happens is a lot of times substance abuse is used as some type of avoidance, like as an avoidance tool. And the issue is that you can't selectively avoid. And so when it comes to self-worth, what you I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, but the reality is you end up losing bits of yourself and can actually lose yourself entirely. You can't just selectively numb the pain through substance abuse. You're also going to numb your joy, you're going to numb your connections, you're going to numb your happiness, you're going to numb your motivation, you're going to numb different things. And so, as far as self worth, you start to lose it, or it gets tied up in the substance, which is a pretty risky place to be as well. I need this to feel good. I need this to feel confident. I need this to feel okay. I need this to get it through the day. I need this to have fun. And so it can become part of your identity. It can become a necessity for some aspect of your life. It can become just tied to that. And when it's tied to an external factor like that, then you no longer have control over it. It has control. Um, as far as spirituality, a lot of substance abuse is tied to guilt and shame. So with spirituality, people just kind of lose it. They lose their connection to God. They lose their connection to their belief. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of recovery modalities actually have connection and a spiritual component to it. I mean, you look at AA, a big part of that is that belief in the higher power. It's a big belief in like letting go, um, realizing that you're powerless and reconnecting with a higher power as part of overcoming the addiction. A lot of people can actually reconnect with God, can reconnect with their spirituality, their belief system, whatever that may be, as part of getting clean and getting sober.
I remember when I was in high school, I specifically remember taking me away from my belief in God. There was something about the way it like affected the way I thought and saw things. And I remember sitting like in my chemistry class when I can't remember if I was a junior or a senior. I think I was a junior. And I just was looking out the window and all of a sudden, like I felt this darkness. And I just remember being like, wow, God's not real. I'm just thinking about everything you just said about how substance abuse numbs you and it can take you away from feeling God and take you away from God almost, it took me away entirely. Like, granted, there were other things going on in my life, like abuse and stuff, but I really attributed like my loss of belief in God to like more of the psychedelic type of substances. Um, but obviously, that's not the case for everyone. That's just my personal experience. How have you seen it affect somebody with their ability to progress in life, like financially, to just be successful? And obviously, there's like a spectrum because there are people who say, like, well, I can drink and I'm fine. Like, I still have a job. People think that they're drinking and they're fine. And I don't want to say that they're not, but I don't know. Do you kind of know where I'm going with this? Do you have any thoughts?
I found myself kind of like almost tempering what I actually think and what I feel and what I've seen and what I've worked, just because there are those people that can, I mean, I know them, they drink and they're fine, they're functional and everything like that. And but even those people, like the reality is when you actually talk to them and when you actually like there's the facade and there's kind of that, hey, I'm doing fine. And they're functional. They're doing all right. They are working, they have jobs, they have all this stuff. And so from the outside looking in, it's like, okay, they can drink and do fine. But when you actually talk to them, there's aspects of their life, as with anybody, but there's aspects of their life that are not actually going that well. And I've never found that substances, especially abuse and use, to really be the solution. Does that make sense? Like,
Yes.
and there's always a justification. Like, it's crazy to me, the justifications that I've heard. Like, I've worked with people on their third DUI, they don't have their license, they've lost their job, and it's the cop's fault, or it's just bad luck. Like, it's just the one time they drank. It's like, this isn't the one time you did it. You got caught, but there's always a justification. It's very rarely that people are actually honest and upfront. Not that it can't happen, and I know people that are, and it's fine, but it's pretty rare that people are actually honest and aware enough about their actual use when they're doing it. And that's part of the problem is they don't look at how it's actually impacting them. They don't look at like what it's actually doing to their lives. I mean, there's a reason why people use. It can be fun, it can be enjoyable, it brings a good sense of euphoria, like it can provide an escape. Like, there's a reason why it's so popular and so pervasive, and I'm not blind to that. But if you're going to look at that, you do also have to look at kind of like what you're mentioning, the emotional, the social, the financial, the whatever cost that it actually is creating in your life. And because there is going to be a cost no matter what level you use at, big or small. And some maybe the cost is small, maybe it's I mean all the way to the extreme. I mean people lose their lives over this. Like overdose is very real. Different type of accidents related to substance abuse are very real. Like
I have this theory. I remember like the day I was thinking about this. I kind of want to hear your thoughts on it. But I've like noticed because I've been around quite a bit of people that have used substances, whether it's from like people from like my high school days or, family. But I feel like the age that somebody starts using and doesn't stop is kind of where they get stuck as far as like maturity. Or if they get bad enough, they regress enough into, like you said earlier, just like losing themselves, like becoming the person that they never intended and never were in the first place.
kind of when your use starts, it can become kind of where your developmental progression stops. And that can be for a lot of reasons, like a lot of times with trauma, that can stop your developmental age as well, and things like that. But substance abuse can for sure do it. Also, the earlier you start, the more likely you are to have more severe substance abuse issues long term.
Wait, hold on. Did you just say that trauma can do the same thing, even if you're not using, can stunt your maturity growth?
It can.
That's actually been on my mind because I have been treating my PTSD for the last like 3.5 years. I've noticed not my entire, self, but there are certain parts of myself that I feel like were not progressing. That part of me was like stuck in trauma and not moving forward.
I mean, the parts of anybody needs to be allowed to grow. Like growth will just kind of happen naturally unless it's stunted in some way, shape, or form. And so, like, and there's a heavy correlation between trauma and substance abuse. So it's kind of hard to splice apart with this conversation. But if I'm traumatized, that piece of me that's traumatized, one way that people deal with trauma is to kind of guard it, to put it in a box, to put it in some safe place. And that's great, and it can keep it safe, but safety doesn't always allow for growth. Growth means getting outside of a comfort zone. It means doing different things. It usually means difficulty and some type of like pain or discomfort that comes with growth, and that's not safe. So if we're keeping that part of us safe because of the trauma we've experienced, it's not going to grow. It's not going to be allowed to progress, and so it will get kind of anchored to that time in your life, that position, that whatever. So same things can happen with substance abuse. If I start using substances as a way to manage my emotions, I'm not developing those skills. I'm not developing those abilities. And so my emotions probably aren't going to grow and develop at the same level or in the same way. And so they get stunted. My emotional growth gets stunted. We talked about identity of who I am. I'm not exploring. I'm not finding out who I am. I'm just drinking. I'm just getting high. I'm smoking. A client who is smoking pretty regularly throughout the day, all day, every day. Like he wakes up, gets high, and that's the way that he's found to kind of function throughout the day. And he's functional enough, but he's not really like the pieces of him aren't developing that would normally develop in a college atmosphere, which is a pretty significant, important part of growth. It's an important time period for growth. And so he's not managing his emotions. He's not managing his family relationships. Like his life is actually starting to crumble around him because he doesn't know how. And it's really difficult for him to take this thing that more or less works for him. It's got some pretty negative side effects, but it does allow him to function. So it's actually pretty difficult for him as he's trying to get clean and trying to become less dependent on getting high to go back, develop those skills so he can get to a level where he can function now.
Somebody once told me what drinking alcohol actually does to your brain in real time. She was a cop and she used to drink, and she got like a DUI and started like learning about like alcohol and what it actually does to you. She was essentially saying that it was like shutting parts of your brain down so that you were becoming like in essentially like disabled. You were disabling your brain. And when she finally realized that like that's what she was doing to like have fun was like hurting her brain, she just totally walked away from alcohol because I don't think people really think about it. It's like, oh, people have been drinking for years. This has been around, since the dawn of time. Like, it's totally normal and okay to drink. But you told me once that you thought that alcohol has more damage
Well,
on relationships, like within families, than drugs.
I think one of the issues with alcohol is, and you kind of mentioned it with what you were just talking about, is that it's more socially acceptable. It's been around for forever. It's legal. And so it's a lot easier to justify. It's more part of the culture. It's more accessible in a lot of ways too. I feel like the effects can be pretty catastrophic. That feels a little dramatic, but that's the reality, and that's what I'd actually say. Just because, I mean, if you think about it, substances really do kind of hit at some pretty key points. Your ability to think, your ability to choose, your ability to decide. I mean, in the church, we'd call that agency. So it can affect it on a couple different levels. Like when you're high, you're drunk. That's one of the effects that it has is it alters and undermines your agency, your ability to think, your ability to decide. And then the addiction piece, like it can make it really hard for you to prioritize things in your life. That can become the priority to your life. Like I said, to the detriment of literally everything. The people that I've worked with have lost jobs, they've lost money, they've lost relationships. I mean, it was really interesting. The first time I ever talked with somebody, we would do an initial assessment, and one of the questions is like, "Have you ever died?" And I thought that was the weirdest question you could ask. But so many people are like, "Yeah, I've died." Because they had overdosed, they would actually get to the point where they would die and then had been revived or brought back. And like I said, I was working with some pretty severe addicts with where I was working, like I said, like court appointed, chronically homeless, like but they'd used to the point where that wasn't an uncommon. We're like, yeah, I've died, and some of them multiple times. And so it was part of the assessment question to just evaluate their youth and the impact that it has on families. I've been to Al-Anon meetings to support other people and stuff like that. And
Sorry, and Al-Anon is not AA. Can you just real quick tell people what Al-Anon is?
so Al-Anon is kind of like the counterpart to AA. It's basically support for family members or other people who are going through addictions. And I've been to AA meetings, I've been to Al-Anon meetings, and it's interesting because in AA meetings, there's kind of a hopeful kind of mentality. It's very supportive. It's, hey, you're doing the work, you're getting there. What's the progression? And it's really good. In Al-Anon, my experience, and this really stuck with me actually, is everyone there just feels like they have a weight around their neck and they're trying to swim, but they're slowly being pulled down. And it was much more, the word I want to use is depressed, but much more just heavy, much more, there wasn't the hope, there wasn't the upbeat kind of attitude. And it was just, I could tell that they loved the people that they were supporting. I mean, they're there. You don't go there just for fun. But it felt like they'd connected themselves to something that was just slowly dragging them down. Once again, it's going to be different for everybody. Some of it was financially, some of it was emotionally, some of it was they're not the person I married anymore. Some of it is they made promises and they're no longer living up to it. Some of it is I don't know how we're going to make rent this month. I don't know when my boyfriend's going to get out of jail. It was the unknown. It was the burden.
My dad, is a drug addict, and so this
Yeah.
topic is very close to home for me. And I'm just going to be really bold about it and say he probably started using when I was 15, 14, even though I was almost 18 like I was still a child and your brain is still developing and so impressionable and things I just feel like things at that age impact you so much more than if he were to start doing it now when I'm, in my
Yeah.
30s. It messed up my life so much. And also didn't help that I wasn't going to church anymore and I didn't believe in God anymore because that just made it all that much worse. When I was coming back to church, I remember going to listen to General Conference, and this might have been one of the first conferences that I had listened to in like 13 years. And I was at my aunt's house with my dad because I was very codependent and was stuck on saving him, which is, part of the reason that it messed with me so much because
Yeah.
I made it my mission to, help him find Jesus and get him sober. So we go to my aunt's to listen to General Conference, and he was just not in a place that to listen. But I was so close to the spirit, and I remember sitting in the living room, and there was a talk. It was a 70, and he was talking about how he was swimming in the ocean with his family, and how he got caught in a riptide, and his wife started to follow him because she trusted him, and she started to get caught in the riptide. And he used this analogy to explain that as you are the head of a family, you are leading your family. I just remember, oh my gosh, like this is exactly what happened to my family. He is speaking to me right now in General Conference. And it's so true. Like, because I grew up in that situation, I know how much parents' choices affect their children. I know that there are some people who can probably use and never abuse, but like from what I've witnessed in my personal life, there is a very fine line, and you don't know when you've crossed it until it's gotten to a point of what you've been talking about, where your life has become so unmanageable that you can't pay your bills, you can't stay in relationships, you can't hold a job and manage your own emotions, and your life is a wreck. The experience that I just shared, is that a common thing you see with substance abuse?
Yeah. If it's a friend of mine, I can leave them. I can unfriend them. If it's a girlfriend, I can break up with them. I don't get to choose my parents. I don't get to choose my family. And so it can lead to substance abuse, or even like we talked about, like it's going to impact the family no matter what. And you're talking about how it can lead, even if it doesn't lead them to substance abuse, it's going to negatively impact them. It's going to make things harder. Because what you're talking about is it's going to be short term, it's going to be like in the middle, and then it's going to be long term too. Like the consequences that you're talking about. There's the immediate, like the interactions that you're having, and then it can, what we've kind of talked about, it can cause trauma, it can cause delayed development, it can cause, if nothing else, like maybe not having a parent or only one parent or something like that. Like, so I don't have that support, I don't have that guidance. And then long term, like what are the physical ramifications, like having a parent that abused substances? What's that going to look like when they're in their 60s, their 70s, their 80s? Like, it doesn't stop.
Right. Coming back to church, I had the realization that if we would have stayed in the gospel, so many of our problems would not be here today. And they are
Yeah.
big problems. My parents could have still gotten divorced and stayed in the church. We didn't need to go down this like insane path. It led to so much heartache. And I just remember being filled with so much regret that we didn't just stay in the church. If we would have just stayed in the church, followed its teachings, our lives would have been so different. And I wouldn't have to spend, so many hours in trauma therapy or years picking up the pieces. Granted, I'm not going to say that I look back and like live in the past and regret it because I am who I am today because of everything I've experienced.
Sure.
And I do think that it's made me stronger and wiser and more compassionate. but that's because of the choices I'm making now. There's a scripture that says, that all things work to the good of those who love God. It's that last part, to those who love God. All things were not working to the good for me when I did not have God in my life. But because I had God in my life, He took everything I've experienced, helped me learn from it, and is helping me grow and be better and possibly help others because of everything I've experienced. But that is not always true if you don't make the choice to want to change and have God in your life and consecrate your life to God, you know?
Only thing you're talking about, and I think this goes a long way, not just with the word of wisdom, but with the gospel in general, is a lot of times people think like, oh, the church is the only way. Like, there's a lot of different ways to do different things, but with the word of wisdom, with other aspects of the gospel, you're going to avoid so much if you can just stick to it, if you can live it, if you can have it be a part of your life. What you were talking about was like so much wreckage, so much damage, so much unnecessary hard is probably the best way that I can put it, could have been avoided if, and this is just one aspect of the gospel, like you're talking about the word of wisdom. Like, my guess is there's a lot of other aspects that could have been avoided, could have been less hard of the gospel if it would have been incorporated into your life. That's not unique to you. Like, that's, I would say, kind of for everyone. Like, if you can live these things, have these things in your life, it's not going to eliminate the hard, but it's going to eliminate a lot of unnecessary hard. And the hard that aspects of life are going to be hard no matter what. The hard is usually going to be towards something more beneficial, some type of growth, some type of progression down the road. And so it's not just hard for hard's sake. It's not just overcoming unnecessary wreckage. It's actually progression and development.
Yeah, I've seen that in my own life as I've graduated from those trials and I have new trials now. And I'm always looking for a deeper meaning and like, how can this make me more Christ-like? Like, and I'm definitely not saying that I'm like, oh, a trial, this is so great. And I'm so amazing. This is going to make me so Christ-like. Like, oh no, there is definitely anger, resentment, confusion. What and because another thing that is going to be, I actually want to have a whole separate episode on this topic is my relationship with my father has affected my relationship with my heavenly father. And I have struggled a lot with believing that God loves me and thinking that I have so many trials because he's angry with me and he's punishing me. And so I definitely am not sitting here saying that I'm like little miss, like perfect when I get trials. But now that I'm not running in circles like I was before, I feel like these trials are taking me on a path to somewhere instead of just, you know, a cycle. How does it look when somebody does finally decide to try and get sober or get sober?
The reality is it's not easy. It's actually it's it's hard. You have this thing that you've developed a pretty close relationship with. It's there when you need it. It's there all the time. You use it for whatever reason, and you take it away. And so it kind of creates this hole in your life that was previously filled by substances. And you have to develop and fill that up with something else. You have to develop the distress tolerance, the emotional regulation skills, the relationship communication skills. That's hard. That comes through practice, it comes through experience, and it's hard. It's also not just like everything's all of a sudden okay. You've usually created some type of wreckage, some type of the trust doesn't just automatically come back with your family and friends. You have to do that. And so a lot of times you will still be treated as if you're using, even though you're clean. And so that can be really hard.
Does that cause relapse a lot?
A lot of times it can. Like, if I'm going to be treated like I'm using, even though I'm not using, I'm not getting any of the benefits of being clean and I'm not getting the benefits of using, what am I doing? So I might as well go, if this is how people are going to treat me. People change at their own speed. And as you're adapting, to expect other people to just adapt to your change and you getting clean and sober, it's not realistic either. Like, they're going to need their own process, they're going to need their own time. And that's going to be for them. And so it's always good when you see the benefits, when you can see the changes, you can see the wins. In my experience, people kind of need a why. Motivation is basically what I'm talking about. Just because you have motivation doesn't mean you maintain it. You have to fuel and feed that motivation as well to kind of keep going. But when people are motivated and they are working and you see them start to get the results, it's actually a really cool experience to see somebody progress and grow and improve. Is cool from the outside, but more than anything, when they see it, like that's the really cool thing. They're like, I am growing, I am improving, I can do this. I'm not inadequate, I'm not tied to this. This isn't who I am. Uh, yeah, it's a really cool experience. I'm thinking of this isn't actually anybody that I worked with. It's actually a close friend. They struggled with drinking actually for I honestly don't know how long. They were never totally honest with me about when it started, how much. But I do know they're going on 3 years. I think this month, 3 years. And they're doing wonderful. Like they've got their life together, job, relationship, family, and their life's not perfect. It's not a solution. It's not like some magic wand. Getting clean and sober doesn't fix everything, but it's a better way and they're more present in their life. They're more connected. They're getting more out of life. Like it's a better way. It's a better life for them.
That's awesome. That is incredible to hear. I remember there was one time I was just sitting on the couch reading. I was reading The Infinite Atonement, and I just like
Mhm.
had this amazing spiritual experience, and I felt Christ so close, and I just was crying. But it was like all of a sudden I was just like overcome with all this inspiration. And I just realized like I have never felt more free in my entire life. Free of like, because I did use alcohol as a crutch for socializing, and just managing my emotions, managing my PTSD and my depression as I had become sober. I don't remember how long I was sober at that time. It probably really wasn't even that long yet, but I remember just realizing true freedom is becoming who God wants you to be. It's what is that scripture? For whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. And honestly, that scripture is one of the most true scriptures for me in my life. I have become so much more than I ever thought I could become because I have given my life to Jesus Christ. And every time I do a little bit more and maybe consecrate a little bit more, even though it seems inconvenient or burdensome, like I never regret it. I never regret it. I've grown, I've met someone new and made a new friend. Like there's always blessings from doing these things. Is there anything else about that specific question that you want to share or anything?
I would just say that it's worth it. And it's not like you get sober and it's done. It's gonna be something that probably is with you for the rest of your life. It's something that will get easier as you maintain it over time. The word of wisdom is also about taking care of your body. A lot of times the word of wisdom can be misunderstood by people and it can almost be turned into like a checklist like, oh, I'm not drinking my coffee, I'm not drinking alcohol, and it's one of the things that can become kind of black and white. Personally, I just wonder if people sometimes miss the mark with that. Like it's more about our bodies are one of the greatest gifts God has ever given us. It's one of the reasons we came here, like if you get into the plan of salvation, everything like that. And so a lot of it's just making sure that you're healthy. When we take care of our bodies, we feel better. We are able to help other people. We're able to be a better instrument in the hand of God. So a lot of the word of wisdom is more about like making sure that we're making decisions and taking care and being good stewards of the bodies that we do have. A lot of people are like I can think of people who are morbidly obese and overweight, but they're not drinking coffee. So are they really living the word of wisdom or are they actually being healthy? Being healthy is going to look different for everybody. So it's more about just saying like what does being healthy look like for me? What do I need to do to be healthy? Am I getting enough rest? Am I sleeping? What does my diet actually look like? Or am I just checking boxes?
Thank you. So
Yeah.
every episode, I like to ask somebody, like, what is your why? Why have you devoted your time, free time, a lot of your extra time to, following Jesus Christ and being a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Yeah, so I knew you were going to ask me this question, and the answer is because I know it's true. And I know it's true because of experiences that I've had, because of answers that I've gotten from prayer, the way I felt, the way it's impacted me, and I've seen it in people around me. Another big thing, and I was kind of thinking about this as we were talking, actually. And I wasn't planning, I even told you I wasn't going to talk about this, but I was involved in personal loss. A couple of people really close to me died a number of years ago. And it was really interesting when that happened. A lot of people came up to me and talked to me about my place in the church, expecting me to be mad at God, expecting me to feel like it wasn't true because this thing happened to me, expecting me to like lose my testimony. And I always thought that that was the weirdest thing. And so I was like, as you asked me why, like, even in those moments, even when I've pushed him away, I know that God's always been there for me. He loves and accepts me for my faults, for my mistakes. Like I said, even when I've pushed him away, he still loved me. So I stay because I know it's true. I stay because I know he's there. I stay because I know it's going to be a better life for me. And I can't walk away from that. Sometimes it seems like it would be easier. Sometimes I push it away, but I know deep down that it is true. I know deep down that he's there. And that's why I stay.
Thank you, Matt. You are an amazing, amazing person. You really are. You've always been a very down-to-earth person. But I just want to say thank you for sharing so much of your experience and knowledge and wisdom with us, and for the example and light that you are for, I know you are for so many people around you. You have a lot of friends and everybody loves you, and there's a reason for it. So thank you so much for letting me lasso you into this.
Okay. No, happy to do it. And thanks for the time.
Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed this content, please like, subscribe, and share. The Be Faithful podcast is not endorsed or sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. This is my personal attempt to share the light of Jesus Christ and to testify that he lives. So please stay tuned for more inspiring conversations. And until next time, keep the faith.